Yes, so this is the next session in our day one for Build a Better Book. And I wanted to introduce Leslie Edmonds, who works for the Sonoma County Office of Education in California. And she is an expert on visual impairments and will tell us about the whole range of visual impairments that you may encounter working on your Build a Better Book projects and when you're finding your community partners. Go ahead, Leslie.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm just so happy to be here to see new faces and old friends from Build a Better Book. And I will just say that since attending the conference, again, Ian, I can't remember what year it was either because we've been in a time zone, but the relationships with my colleagues from Build a Better Book has been incredible. And I just feel like we really are helping and just meeting people I normally would never really run into, and just creating these relationships has been amazing and so fulfilling. But the proof has been with the students I work with as a teacher of the visually impaired have really benefited from what's coming out of Build a Better Book. So just a big cheer for this organization, what's going on, the movement. I'm so happy to be a part of it. And I also just want to give a shout out to my colleague who's on here right now, Neil McKenzie. I'm going to say Neil's name a lot during this presentation, and I know he's busy actually working on some calculus tactile images for a high school student. So I'm sure he's working while he's listening, but I may call on you, Neil, to give your input because it's such a pleasure to work with him each and every day. So I have a presentation I'm going to share. And so I think that my goal here is to first make sure that I have it in presentation mode. So bear with me. You guys see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think my goal today is I just want to give an overview of visual impairments, understanding visual impairments, because this is who we're serving. This is what the end goal is to help students with visual impairments, anyone with visual impairments and other disabilities, and more importantly, anyone who's learning what the benefit of having tactile images, audio input, braille on their materials can be a benefit to learning. So I'm excited to just go over, kind of touch upon visual impairments, just so you know that what you're producing for Build a Better Book is really helping our audience. So now I'm trying, okay. So I'm just going to define visual impairment. And, you know, when we think of visual impairment, we usually think of acuity, 20/20, 2200. We have acuity in our head, but visual impairment is really more than that. So it's blindness, but it can also be low vision. It can be having field deficit, meaning that we can't really see out of the sides of our eyes. It could also be brain function. So it's a very broad term. And I'm just going to share this statistic. 678,000 kids, 0 to 20 in the United States are defined as having a visual impairment. That's an enormous number. That's people we can help. And then we're helping other people with disabilities. We're helping other learners. So Build a Better Book has a very big impact. It's exciting. I'm trying to advance my screen. So when we think about visual impairment.
Now I asked Jake Greenwald to certify it.
Sorry, I thought that was a question. So we have different types of visual impairments. And so I just want to kind of highlight this so you guys have a better understanding. And some of you might already know this, but just to go over it. So we have visual acuity. That's what I was talking about when you hear 20/20, 2200. That is the acuity, how well a person can see with their glasses, without their glasses. That is your acuity. There's also visual field. Visual field refers to what you can see on the sides of your eyes, upper, lower. And the best example is someone who has vision, they're losing their vision out of the sides of their eyes, diabetic retinopathy, for instance, and they just have pinpoint vision. So think of everything except just tiny little tunnels of vision in front of you are available. That's visual field. We also have people who have trouble seeing up above. They might have trouble moving their eyes from left to right. They might have trouble seeing down below. That's our visual field. So if it's limited, if your visual field is limited, you also qualify as someone with a visual impairment. And then the last category is really behind the eyes, your visual system. So I'll go over this in a little bit more detail, but the brain is connected to the eye and the brain interprets what we see. And because the brain is so magical but delicate, there can be some problems in the processing of images. And that is a physical condition of your visual system has a deficit, and therefore you're considered visually impaired. So that's just a brief overview, but does anyone have any questions on that so far? I'm just touching upon it. Okay, that's the Reader's Digest version of visual impairment. So I wanted to give you, besides this just absolutely adorable child, if you can get past that cute picture, we have our leading causes of visual impairment. And the leading cause is cortical visual impairment. That's when I was talking about the visual pathway and the processing of images, the connection from the brain to the eyes. That is our leading cause, 47%. Some other leading causes: albinism, retinoblastoma, traumatic brain injury, the optic nerve, that is what connects the brain to the eyeball, is the optic nerve. That's having some deficit there. And then retinal detachment is where what's holding the eye in place gets a little loose or has some deficit there. So they're just crunching some numbers on visual impairment for you. I want to talk about also progressive visual impairment. So we do have younger people, even of any age really, where you could have a visual impairment that's progressive, meaning that it's probably going to get worse in time. So glaucoma, probably our biggest category of progressive visual impairment. Diabetic retinopathy, that's what my mother had, and she had a slow loss of vision over the years that resulted in significant vision loss when she was older. Stargardt disease, many of our younger students, this will lead to vision loss in their teens. And retinitis pigmentosa, another one that really manifests in a child's teens. And then we have that progressive vision loss. So we're looking to help them as they're going through this process of dealing with vision loss.
We have a quick question, Leslie.
Of
Sorry, I'm
course,
going to jump
Beth.
in.
Yes.
They're asking you to explain the difference between cortical visual impairment and the other causes that you listed. So what makes that leading cause different?
Yeah, and I have a little segment on cortical visual impairment that hopefully will give you a better idea of it. It's the connection from the brain to what your eyes are seeing. So someone with cortical and visual impairment can have extremely healthy eyes. Looking at them, you would say, oh, nothing wrong there, nothing going on. But actually it's what their brain is processing, the processing of those images. And that's where the visual impairment is. And I'll give you an example. I had a student many years ago who was learning to read. And they could only read when they were swinging on a swing. As soon as they stopped swinging, the images became blurry. So for whatever reason, their brain would process images while they were moving, but not when they were stationary. I also had another student who could identify a ladybug on my shoulder, but she couldn't recognize her mom's face. So these are processing of images, and there's a big spectrum of that. So that's really just kind of CVI in a nutshell, but we'll go over that a little bit more. But thank you for asking, and I appreciate any questions. I know it's a lot, this is an overview, but I just want to let you know that there are a lot of kids, a lot of people out there who are going to benefit from what's going on at Build a Better Book. It's exciting to get the help. So visual processing is what we're talking about now. Other categories of that can be dyslexia, can be not being able to recognize letters in their entirety. It might be blurring of words. It might be skipping images. That's the brain processing what they are seeing. These are the common types of visual processing disorders. And I'm sharing this presentation with everyone. It's a lot of information, but you'll of course be able to go back whenever you need to. So I'm going to go into CVI, which is cortical visual impairment. So it is a neurological condition where vision impairment is caused by abnormalities in the brain and visual processing. So that's a lot. But I put a little image up here because it shows you that the eyes at the front of our head, there's so much going on behind the eyes. There's a whole visual pathway that connects to the brain. And when that's compromised, it can lead to some neurological conditions that adversely affect our vision. And so that is cortical visual impairment. So I have a little video, just an overview video that it's very quick, but it gives a really great explanation. So I'm going to play that now.
You do not see with just your eyes, but also with your brain. Your eyes are connected to your brain by the optic nerve. The optic nerve sends messages to your brain about everything you see. Over here, a picture is made of the things you see with your eyes. When you have a visual impairment, this may be because your eyes do not work properly, or because your optic nerve does not send the right message to your brain. But even if your eyes are able to see properly, your brain may not be able to form a good picture. Loss of sight caused by your brain is called CVI, cerebral visual impairment. It means that your brain is not able to fully understand the things seen by your eyes. More time is needed for you to see properly. You can have CVI from birth, but also when your brain has been injured by an accident. Not every child with CVI has the same problems. What you find difficult depends on the age at which you got CVI and which part of your brain is damaged. Some children have difficulties recognizing objects amongst other things, like spotting your friend in a crowd in the playground, or finding the peanut butter between the other jars on the table, or finding your homework assignment, among other things, written on the digital blackboard. Some children find it hard to gauge depth or speed. If this applies to you, then perhaps you'll stumble and fall more often, or knock things over. Or maybe you find it difficult to cross roads. Then you don't know whether it is best to wait for the car to pass, or if it's safe to cross. Perhaps the part of your brain that helps you recognize things is not working properly. Picture it as a library. The library contains images of all the faces you've ever seen. You use the library to remember what someone's face looks like, to recognize if someone is looking happy or angry. You also use this part of your brain for reading. CVI can make it hard to see well when there is too much noise around, or to concentrate when other children are talking, or when music is playing. It is difficult to perform an exercise in gymnastics when someone talks to you. One thing at a time works best. When the parts of your brain that make an image of what your eyes pass on are not working properly, seeing becomes much more of a challenge than it is for other children. So what can you do about it? Surgery is not a possibility, and there is no medication. Some children may see better with prescription glasses, but these are not a cure for CVI. Sometimes children will have fewer problems when they grow older. Adjusting your computer screen may be helpful. Working in a quiet space may help you too. At Bartimaeus, we can help you.
Okay, so I'm going to move on from that, but I love that overview. I think it's a really great just description of what CVI is. So I have up on the screen some causes of CVI, and there's many. We work with students, can be babies, adults that have processing disorders, cortical visual impairment. So a lot of different things can happen for this to take place. It's quite a list. So how Build a Better Book fits into this is that for cortical visual impairment, there's research that shows that having materials that help our children learn and that are adapted can help with visual impairment, move towards resolution, and help with better what we call functional vision and how they see. And that's what's so exciting about this program, is that the research supports that if you have multiple modalities, meaning if you present materials that have tactile enhancements, that have an audio component, Braille, whatever the case may be, it can really, really help that child learn. And what's beautiful is that it's going to help other kids around too, and it's going to help other students learn as well. So that's what's so great about Build a Better Book is that tactile books are really helpful. So I wanted to give just a little example. You're going to get so many examples, you're going to get so much information, you have so many experts out there who are going to be helping you. But I just wanted to give you some materials I use in school. I can't take credit for building this, for making this, but this is for a young student. Just some tactile books with images, black background. So when we talk about cortical visual impairment, backgrounds can be very overwhelming, clutter. So we use black backgrounds, and you'll get into this more. Also, tactile images. So here's my shout out to Neil. Neil, I know you're out there, but Neil is like the expert at tactile images. He produces for our students. He will have Braille, he'll have, it's hard to tell on the screen, but this is raised images that can be felt with the Braille. And he makes these for our students. And when I tell you that every student loves this, would you want a tactile image or just a two-dimensional image that's like on paper? It's just absolutely brilliant. Not just even curriculum, he even does, I'm like, this is the Neil show, the shout out to Neil show. Maps, when a student is learning a new area, he'll do a tactile diagram of the area. And so it's just so much more information when you have tactile images. It's really quite, for our students, they benefit so much. So I do want to say one thing though on tactile images. When you have a very complex tactile images, it's really nice to have a key at the beginning of your book. And I've just been kind of focused on this year because I have been using a lot of tactile images. And I like to go over what each image represents prior to using a book or a map. So I just wanted to throw that in there before I forget, that having a key describing what the tactile material means is extremely helpful. Say you have a dotted line or arrows representing some outline. So on this presentation, it's an overview, but what I've done is embed a lot of resources into this PowerPoint. So at your leisure, you can go back and check out the links I've put in or any videos just to get some more information and kind of have this as a resource. Paths to Literacy from Perkins School for the Blind is really my go-to for information on literacy for students with visual impairments and other disabilities. So there's a really great Liz Egan. It's fantastic at making tactile books, and she has a really great blog post. I have a link to that. So now I'm just going to go through some of the resources I have. There's also videos on paths to literacy. I'm not going to play this one, but you can see students of the visually impaired who are actually producing tactile books and what they are doing. And you'll see on this one, this is the Itsy Bitsy Spider, black background, big, bold red image of the spider, very big pipe for the spider to go up and down.
A montage of.
I also want to talk about the reason for the black background. It's just with not even just CVI, but a lot of our students with visual impairment, crowding is a big issue. And when we say crowding, we mean a busy page. So just keep in mind when you're making your books or creating tactile images, whatever you might be doing, less can be better. Less images to process, less images to feel, less is more in this case. So you just want to keep it, simple but meaningful. That's really the best advice I can give on that. And if you are making something for our younger students, a black background would be ideal. So high contrast images. And you'll hear more about that during the conference. Just some examples here of images. Everybody loves brown bear, brown bear. But as you can tell in the top left corner, there's a lion, and it's kind of hard to discern those colors. And that might be a bit too crowded for our students. And so it shows a progression of what you can do to make those images more accessible. Having real objects to accompany the image, also a great idea. And you're going to see in this conference some amazing work that's done, some interpretations of the Eric Carle books and so many other books. And everybody has a different take on how they interpret the book. And that's what's so great about the community of Build a Better Book, is that we can share ideas and say, hey, oh, I never thought of that. What a great idea. So we have more books that are being adapted. Just some examples. I'm gonna skip on that one there. Just a nest. Well, here's some birds. And you think, whoa, my gosh. But let me tell you, this is a great way to show birds in a nest. You have the feathers, you have the tactile nest. If you have a visually impaired child, a blind child, and they feel that, that really gives them an idea of the birds in the nest. So think of it that way. When in doubt, close your eyes, try it yourself. Best way to figure it out. Having the Braille available, having the print available. These are multiple modalities. That's as hard to say as Build a Better Book. Again, here's going with the nest theme, having just those images that someone with a visual impairment, blind or low vision, can really feel it and get an idea of a nest. And just like, oh, hey, this is kind of rough to touch. Let them get that idea, that concept of a nest, not just the word nest, not just a description of nest, but actually feeling the nest and getting that overall concept. So tactile graphics, I touched upon this a little bit. Here's more of Neil's amazing work and just how incredible they are. This is a twister game. Neil adapted a twister game. So getting into more than books. Build a Better Books is more than books. Ian, you're creating these games for visually impaired students that are off the charts. Games are learning. Games are beneficial. Games are social. It's an important concept. Build a Better Book is so much more. And creating games for visually impaired is a really great offshoot. Talking about putting Braille in your books, where appropriate, you're going to have some information about and adapting materials and adding Braille. I always think it's a great practice, especially with a visual impairment. We never know if it's a progressive visual impairment. You may have students that aren't going to lose any more vision, but you may have students that are. So we're talking about universal design. If you adapt a book, I think it's a great practice to have Braille in it because you want to reach as many people as you can. And it would be very beneficial to have the Braille in there. We also have for tactile graphics, I put the guideline and standards listed on the left-hand side, like, oh my gosh, for tactile graphics, there's that many standards. And here, I am here to say, just do what you can and do your best and refer to the guidelines as needed. But it, you know, how far over from the left should the Braille start and what kind of materials? I say whatever is going to work and start from there. But you can refer to these standards from the Braille Authority. They actually are, and it's an amazing compilation of standards, and I have a link to it. If you ever get stuck on, what should I do when I'm making a tactile graphic? Great resource. One thing I want to mention is that let's not forget art. Adapting art is a big part of this program as well. And you have books, you have games, but also fine art should be in there as well. And I have some resources here on how to adapt art. And I think you'll see that there's a trend now for museums and art spaces to have tactile images, Braille on the wall describing the picture, audio content. It's really happening. And so many more people are benefiting from this. So fine art as well. And so these are just the slides for my resources, and I'll just go through it quickly. You can refer back to these. I did Paths to Literacy, that was the last one. There's a website, CVI Scotland. If you're ever interested in more about cortical visual impairment, this site is amazing. It has videos, it answers questions, has a lot of great information if you're ever interested in learning more. Look at this, Build a Better Book. And not because I'm plugging it, but you guys have great resources on here. It's really incredible. I share it all the time. It's so well put together. It covers everything. Sometimes your resources are right in your front door, and Build a Better Book has amazing resources. I'm so impressed with what you guys have done. Kudos to you. So Pinterest, I'm not like a great Pinterest person, but boy, is there a lot of great resources on Pinterest, and be prepared to go down the rabbit hole because I hope you have a few hours on your hands because it's so interesting what people are posting and sharing. And all the links are in the presentation. 3D printed materials, I didn't talk about that too much, but they are a huge asset to all of this as well. And we have some experts in the field with us today. 3D printed materials can be such a help and such an asset to learning, and can be a great addition to books, to games, to materials. So a lot that I have, I keep doing my shout outs to Neil, but Neil did a great presentation on 3D printing that I've linked here. But the beauty is that he has a resource page at the end, and you can access here on the slide. We are so grateful to 3D printing in the visual impairment world. It's opened up a lot of doors. I also have a couple sources if you're working online, how to make some cool images. Bubbling of words, just visuals that can help. And I also wanted to just talk about, this is coming up really quick, but there's a training from the Texas School for the Blind on October 4th, literacy considerations for individuals with CVI. Just a shout out to that. I'm going to attend, and Texas School for the Blind has great programs. A couple of books, Little Bear Seeds, just again, to help you create better content for our visually impaired students. And then just some online materials for you as well. So really just kind of going through the references, resources. They're in the presentation at your leisure if you want to have some more information on that. But for the rest of the time, I'd love to take any questions anyone has. It's a lot, but I think my main message here is that what Build a Better Book is doing, what you will be doing, is going to benefit so many people. It's going to help students with visual impairments. It's going to help families. It's going to help teachers. It's going to help libraries. It's going to help communities. It has a big impact. And I'm just so proud to be a part of it all.
Thank you so much, Leslie. And I think we have a small enough group that if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, then go right ahead. You don't have to type it into the chat. Or if you just want to give a shout out to one of our many awesome people on.
I do have a question. This is Ana Lisa from Laredo, Texas. And I just wanted to ask if cortical visual impairments, that term is the same as neurological visual impairments?
Yeah, it can be a cerebral visual impairment. They're different but interchangeable, if that makes sense. It's all about the brain processing what is being seen. And there's so many, as it showed in the video, there's so many different parts of the brain that can be affected, that can affect facial recognition or seeing color or blurriness. There's every person is different with that diagnosis. So it's a very large spectrum. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Could I ask a question? Thank you so much for your presentation.
Hi.
Thank you. I was wondering, what percentage of the children who are identified as visually impaired have cortical or cerebral impairments, and what percentage of people grow out of it?
Well, right now the number is 47%, which is huge. That's almost half.
Yeah.
It's huge. When I got into visual impairment, my mother was visually impaired, so I've been around it my entire life. But the research is very new on cortical visual impairment. So we really have generations of people who really didn't get the early intervention that could have helped with what we call their functional vision. But now there is a lot more research. There's a lot more collaboration going on. And so we're really seeing progress in actually helping the children. But the data is new, really just a couple decades. And if you think about it, that's not that long of a period of time. So when I first started in visual impairment, we really didn't even talk about cortical visual impairment. It really was an unknown. But the research is happening and the interventions are happening. And so now we're seeing the progress and we're seeing the help for students. So it's relatively new. but the help is, it's really showing up in the research, and it's fantastic. It's very positive.
Leslie, I just wanted to echo one thing that you referenced a few times. Is one of the things that we've heard from a number of people who have participated in the project is that if some of these tactile materials are presented to a child with visual impairments in the class, often a lot of other kids are really like, that's what they want to learn from too. That's the diagram they want to look at, because not only is it visual, it's also tactile, or it has these other enhancements. And I think it's a really important thing to keep in mind, and something as we think about trying to create and communicate information in different modes for different learning styles or different abilities. Often we see that those enhancements make it better for everyone, regardless of their abilities or their ability to see or what it is. So I think that's been an interesting thing to hear a lot, is that a lot of these enhancements just make it better and more fun for everyone to engage with.
Indeed. And you had shown a library that had the materials where you could check them out. And there's just so many people who can benefit if it's in a local library. I'm actually working with a school district in a very rural area where they have nothing. They have nothing. And so what we're doing is trying to get materials to the local library, because then anyone can go in and benefit from the materials. And it's just like, oh, that's the answer. The local library is the answer. And so it's really fun to be able to get people to donate materials and fill this space in a rural area that otherwise they really had nothing and they had no access to anything. And so building a library of materials for them is just so fulfilling, and everyone's on board. Everyone's excited about it.
Yeah, I think that slide that you're referring to that was in one of Kat's images is a really neat example of a Build a Better Book program that was facilitated by a school librarian. And so she was able to having students work on a longer, more extended project, but then the results of those projects, she kind of put into a format that was really easy for teachers and students to check out at the school library. So I think the kids actually did some research ahead of time, asking teachers, what would you like to have in a more accessible format? And they got suggestions from science teachers and the music teacher and different disciplines at the school. But now they're starting to build that library, which is a really neat outcome of the program at their school.
It's incredible. And something that I didn't talk about that I really need to mention is when students are producing materials for other students, and just the messaging that happens. I'm going to take, for example, Ian's project over in New Jersey, just having a class that is producing materials for students with visual impairments and actually speaking to people with visual impairments, getting feedback and perfecting what they're producing, and just the empathy that comes from that and the messaging of helping. It gives me goosebumps talking about it right now. That is the magic. When students are producing materials for students, incredible, what a world.
Hi, Leslie. Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
And this is also for Ian, because he's worked with other students as well. We're a school in New Jersey, and we're starting a program this year. We've been in touch with everybody from the BBB, and we're very, very excited. It's more of a politically correct, like our students are going to be paired with visually impaired special needs children from a wonderful school in New Jersey, SHI. It's a school for children with special children with hidden intelligence. How should our students address their visually impaired students? In other words, do they call them our children, our partners, our blind children? What's the correct terminology? And we have high school students, and they'll be paired with small children, like in elementary school age children. What would you suggest?
I just think they're peers.
Peers.
I just don't think I would label, because we don't want to limit. We want to embrace the fact that they're working together, they're teammates, they're colleagues. their peers. And so they're working together. And I think that's the best way to do it is,
Yeah.
I'm curious to what other people think and what you think, Ian, on this. I've never really brought it up that my students are visually impaired, even though they're all visually impaired when they're working with someone in that capacity. They're just peers and they're equals, and they're in this together to find a better way to access materials. So really, we're all working together, all of us, the students,
Leslie,
everybody.
could I say something really quick on that?
Of course.
I would just say too, to not be afraid to say, oh, look at this, or we're gonna go see this. Not be afraid to say the word blind, because it just makes it so much awkward, much more awkward, and it really isn't when you avoid those things. I remember the first year I ever worked with a blind student, there's a teacher that came in and he was so afraid to say blind. And it took me and the student, I think 25 minutes to realize that, that he was using all these other words, and he was like so petrified. And then my students like, hey, it's okay, I'm blind. Like, just, I would say, do not be afraid to say blind, visually impaired. Hey, let's go see this. I'll see you tomorrow. That's the typical language. That's the language they use too.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great point, Neil. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have much less experience, but when I was working with students, especially at the St. Joseph School for the Blind, younger students and also middle school age, they are kids, right? And I think that's definitely when I work with Leslie and Neil, like these. That's why games also resonates, I think, so well. Is that kids are kids. Like no matter what challenge you have, it really, like, it is amazing. Like it doesn't matter where you're from. Like kids are kids, and they're clever and smart and funny, and will say things, and yeah, they just want to be part of kind of a process of you're making this book or the game, and they want to be part of it. So yeah, kids are kids. So I don't know, that's been my general experience.
Exactly. Thanks, you guys. That's such great input. It's our team. We're all working together.
I think teammate is a great word.
Yeah, I think that's another great aspect of this whole thing too, is that even some children, even to adulthood, don't have experience with people with disabilities. So the longer that kind of happens, it sometimes builds up this wall where instead of asking questions or having that interaction, it might be easier to avoid that. So instead of, oh, maybe going up, I don't want to say something to offend this person, or, I just don't have that interaction. I'll avoid the interaction, which is pretty isolating. And sometimes, people with disabilities have that isolation because those interactions are, I would just rather not. And so that's another great part of this program, is it breaks those down, especially at a very young age. So then we're sending out very young, informed, and eventually adults to be way more comfortable with a lot of different types of people, and to go to those types of people as opposed to avoid an awkward interaction, which is a lot of times in people's minds a lot easier to do.
Thank you, Neil. So well said. So I did notice in the chat, someone had asked about the bubble words that I quickly went through. I do have a little how-to video as part of the presentation. I made a little video on how to make bubble words. And so there is some research that shows that words that have a high contrast outline might be better well received by a lot of our students with visual impairments. And Christine Roman has made a fun little website on how to make these bubble words. And so then you can just copy it or do it by hand or cut and paste. And so I have a little video about that included in the presentation. I use it quite often. Anything else? I hope that wasn't too much.
Great job, Leslie.
I could
Great
talk
job.
about it for hours and hours and hours if you want.
No, I think that was fantastic, Leslie. I think it's really helpful to learn kind of more about the different visual impairments that different groups might be working with, and especially like to think about some of the different types of products you might make if you're working with students who have CVI versus other types of visual impairments.
Thank you so much for allowing me to share. And again, just the friendships and the relationships I've made from Build a Better Book. So many experts in so many different fields and different areas. When we all come together, it really is magic. And it's been so beneficial to so many students, to so many families. I'll say it again. It just, what a great program and what a gift.
Well, thanks so much, Leslie. We are so lucky to have you and Neil as part of this team, that's for sure. Let's see. All right, before we let Leslie go, does anyone have any last questions? Leslie and Neil are an amazing resource, and they have been just so helpful to so many groups that have been working on different projects. And we really appreciate both them and their students who have really provided a lot of feedback to a number of different projects.
Yeah, so reach out.
Reach out,
We're
and we
here
encourage
to-
you to try to find the Leslie and Neil in your community. If you, they're an amazing resource.
Yeah, we're here to help. So you have our email, you have our info. And welcome. Welcome to Build a Better Book family. It's a family.